back, everybody. Alicia, welcome to Awakening Aphrodite.
Thank you, Amy. So happy to be here.
So you step on people for a living. Wow. All right. We're going to get into this. I'm so excited for this show because my show is about holistic health and wellness. And, well, you're truly the mind-body person, right? I mean, we're talking about the body. We're going to get into fascia and, the physical restrictions and adhesions in the body that we all have. We were all too tight, in my opinion. But we're obviously going to get into the emotional component of that as well. I'd love to get into the symbolism of fascia, go little metaphysical, but stay with the grounded as well. So if you're up for it, my friend, we're gonna tackle all of it and help people understand their bodies more, get a bigger picture. But I did mention to people your background in the intro. Do you want to just give us a quick synopsis of your story and how you got to stepping on people for a living?
Yeah, that certainly wasn't what I thought when I was little. I want to grow up and step on people.
Yeah, literally, guys. And we're not talking like physically or emotionally stepping on. We're talking about she literally walks on people. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to make a really long story short, and I'm happy to go into my story if that feels like what you want to do today. But my own childhood trauma, ended up turning into chronic pain. Of course, I didn't know that, but I ended up in chronic pain from about 13, 14 years old till 33, not understanding that there was an emotional component in the beginning. And of course, didn't have Google and YouTube and podcasts to learn from.
Yep.
And trauma wasn't very, a popular topic. It's pretty taboo. So of course I went to all of the, normal places you go, chiropractors and massage therapists, acupuncturists. And I did try talk therapy, but I didn't really connect the two. And no one was telling me that the pain I was feeling in my body had something to do, perhaps, because it doesn't always, I will say that, I'll be sure to say that, but that it might have something to do with the traumas I experienced in childhood. So really what brought me into this career was my own pain, which I think is true for a lot of people. But it really wasn't until I had my own personal breakthrough that I was able to really start helping people. And I think that makes sense. Like if, I have a saying, I teach people what I do now as well. And when I'm teaching practitioners, I talk about how we need to go first and that we can only take people as far as we've gone ourselves.
Yes.
Or we can enter the unknown with our clients, but we can't help them do something we haven't done ourselves with foresight. So yeah, I ended up in massage school in 2008, and that's where I found the first modality of stepping on people. Really my introduction to the world of fascia. And the moment I was stepped on, like the instant that weight came into my calf, which was the first muscle group that, I experienced being stepped on, I knew I had this full-bodied knowing I was going to be okay. And up until that moment, I wasn't sure if life would be worth living in a body that felt like a torture chamber every day. So much anxiety, so much systemic tension, jaw pain, knee pain, couldn't run, couldn't hike, gut pain. And I just instantly knew I would be okay. And I wish it was just an instant overnight success story, but it wasn't. Yeah. But it gave me this knowing that I just had to pursue. And that knowing had to do with fascia. I was just like, there's something about this fascia thing and being stepped on that I have to figure out. And ultimately ended up being my best friend that helped me run and hike again. And I'm simplifying a very long story, but it was that experience in 2011 that gave me the launch pad for my private practice, where I really was able to start helping people with the mind-body, the whole mind-body thing. I didn't know a lot about it, but I had been learning a little bit about the nervous system and neural loops or myelination pathways. I don't know if you remember when we called it that,
sure,
muscle memory.
Sure. I sure do.
Yeah, and nobody really says that anymore. But I was learning about that in 2010 and 2011. So yeah, I just kind of pieced these things together and largely self-taught, not completely. I don't mean self-taught. I guess I shouldn't say that. But the body, my body first, and then the bodies of all my clients have been my greatest teachers. And I believe every single person and their body has something to teach us all.
totally agree. Well, you have just such a amazing success story. And I think it's just so inspiring. And, hats off to you for your perseverance and your courage. And, so many people are dealing with chronic pain. I mean, honestly, more than I realized. And I've had my fair share. I was always the real intense athlete my whole life. I like to still think I am, but, and then I kind of parlayed that into back in the 80s, teaching aerobics when aerobics came out with Jane Fonda and all that stuff. And, but I've always been very active and athletic. But I played sports, and I played sports with the boys. I was on the boys' teams. So I was certainly not the best one. But then when I went to the girls' teams, oh yeah, it was like a whole different story. So I basically got a lot of rough and tumble. I got beat up a lot. And I played a very intensive international soccer. And let me tell you, heading the ball from like midfield to the goalpost, I mean, crazy stuff on my body. So what I'm saying is I am now, was on my, second half of my life here, paying the price for all those athletic. I played ice hockey. I mean, collisions like you wouldn't believe, like concussions, bloody noses, black eyes, the whole thing. Too many concussions to count. My body sure did keep the score. So and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because like I mentioned, I want to get into the biomechanics, the physiological components of pain, but also the metaphysical and symbolic components, because my gosh, I mean, Alicia, how much do you think it's 50-50? I mean, yeah, you could have like a car accident and acute, mechanical injury. But for those of us like me, like a person who's athletic, active, yeah, I've got aches and pains, but I also, of course, and who probably doesn't, I've got some emotional baggage too that was very traumatic for me as a child. So how do you help clients kind of navigate through that? Like, what's a biomechanical? What's an emotional? Do they go together? Like, how do we unravel this?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm about to share is based on, almost 17 years now of working with people. And what I always like to say is it's individual. So there's, everybody, I have a YouTube channel, of course, and I have courses, and people email me and people comment on my YouTube channel, and it's not their fault, because I believe this is kind of the culture we're in. We've been indoctrinated to kind of believe that there are 5 steps to everything, or 10 steps, or, if you have back pain, if you just do these 5 things, it'll get rid of it. Or if you have trauma, just do this and it'll, get it out of your body. Or if you, and so the first thing I would say is it has to be about you. Like, you have to understand that you're a unique individual. The way you processed emotions in childhood is going to be unique to you. The way you hold it in your body, hold trauma or hold emotions, whether you suppress them or not, is going to impact your body in unique ways. And so that's the first thing, is understanding you're unique, but we also share the fact that we're human together. And so there are patterns that run across human beings. And there are definitely patterns that I've seen throughout my career. For example, people with fibromyalgia diagnoses. I don't love diagnoses, but they'll come to me and they have the diagnosis. And there's often a very strong pattern across all people with fibromyalgia, which is really interesting, or people with MS, multiple sclerosis. And so I find that fascinating, because these patterns do show up, but I think we would be doing ourselves a disfavor if we assumed that all people with fibromyalgia or all people with multiple sclerosis have it for the same reasons. So I've developed this method called Kinetics, which is a mapping methodology. And so whether or not you do kinetics mapping, this word mapping, I think, is how we unravel it, what you're talking about.
Mapping. Okay, can you define mapping then?
I will, yeah. So a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, so this is what I do when I'm stepping on people. We're mapping through the fascia release. So when I step on people, it's a partner fascia release method. But the method is a mapping method. The partner fascia release is really just a technique, a modality. There's nothing that special about it. I don't think there's anything that special about any modality, including that one. How it's used, how something is used, how a tool is used is what makes it unique. For example, knives can be used for many things. right? We can
good or bad. Yep.
Exactly. And we can cut up vegetables with them, or we can go play in the woods throwing, or whatever, do bad things with them. So it's how the tool is used that results in a certain outcome or not. So how we use something like fascia release, that determines the outcome. So how I like to use this partner fascia release is as an assessment tool or a diagnostics tool. I'm putting it in air quotes, because I'm not a doctor and I don't diagnose people. But it's like diagnostics for the human organism.
Sure.
And that's my favorite way, because talking and trying to figure things out with our heads is almost impossible because, I'm sure you've experienced this, Amy. But we can talk ourselves in circles. We can ruminate and brood on something and think to ourselves, God, if I could just figure it out, but we just go round and round in circles. And we're really good at deluding ourselves. We have a subconscious, we have a conscious mind, and we have a subconscious psyche. And it's really that subconscious where the patterns need to be revealed, or they need to be made conscious, really. That's where the things are that are blocking us or that need to be tended to. And they live in the body. That's my opinion anyway. My experience is that subconscious psyche is actually dwelling in the body. And the body doesn't lie because it doesn't speak words. It just speaks the language of feeling. And so if I step on you, for example, and you go into a fight response where you're holding your breath and you're clenching your body and fighting me, and I can feel you kind of trying to push me out, well, we now know something about you and your nervous system related to this activity that we're doing. So that is one way we can start to unravel things. For example, that tells us about the nervous system, but not about your fascia. So I like to say to people, because fascia is kind of the thing that I'm known for online, even though pain is actually really the thing that I know the most about. But there's something about this fascia thing too. People seem to think there's something to it. It's like we feel something when we hear the words. So that's what happened for me. And it happens all the time in emails that I get, or people, my clients that come to me, or students that want to learn, is there's just something about this. I think it's the key. I'm I totally get it. And it probably is. But what's so interesting is that fascia won't change just because we want it to or perform certain techniques. So, fascia is this abundant tissue in the body. It's the most abundant tissue we have. It wraps every nerve ending, every fibril of muscle tissue, every fiber of muscle, every muscle bundle, and then the muscle group. And then it comes out of the musculature and turns into tendon, and that attaches to bone. It wraps our organs. It wraps everything.
It's like saran wrap around the muscle type thing.
Well, that's a decent metaphor, but I don't love it. Here's why. Because it paints a picture of sort of an inert substance that we should be able to manipulate and stretch and, oh, it's saran wrap. We should just be able to stretch it out.
Yeah, right.
But it's the most living tissue in the body. It Amazing. Is the most dynamic. Yeah. So if you imagine saran wrap wrapping every nerve ending and every muscle fiber, but then sandwiched between two pieces of saran wrap, the fascia, housed inside the fascia is an entire ecosystem of glycoproteins and water, H2O, and then structured water. We can get into that if you want, because it's fascinating. Yeah. There's a water battery because of those things that powers fluids through our entire system, including our circulatory system. It's where every single nerve signal is sent through. So nerves, imagine through inside the saran wrap coating, if you will. So fascia is mostly water. So the saran wrap isn't the fascia and then something else is inside it. It's just sort of the coating, like an apple has a peel, right? Mm-hmm. It's still an apple.
It's almost like a biofilm.
Yeah. So the peel is still part of the apple. It's just it's just slightly different texture. So the same with the fascia. It's still fascia, but on the outside we have denser versions of it, and then on the inside it's very liquid. It's full of these H3O2 gels, structured water gels, and then actual H2O water. And then nerve communication, nerve signals are just electricity is traveling, zooming, throughout this entire system, traveling through the fascia from the body to the brain. It's intercepting light from, when we're exposed to light. So it's really that watery fascia part of us that is absorbing a lot of that light and then moving that through the system. So it's largely that fascial system that the 5 kinetic energies of the planet are absorbed into the human organism and then moved. So we move them through the system. So it's a very alive substance. It's not inert. It's not dead. It has an intelligence to it, and it won't be pushed around. So that's, I think, what makes it the most fascinating thing to me, because isn't that something, it's...
I love it. I think, it's great because I used to explain to people, it's like, everyone who's taken a whole chicken and tried to cook it, right? And that like membrane coating around the muscle meat, that's the fascia, right? And it's, like you said, it's the most abundant protein in the body. You can think of it as collagen or whatever. But from what I've learned, and I'd like to know what you think, obviously, is I was told once by a physical therapist that it's actually not the muscles, because I also teach yoga, I have for decades. It's actually not the muscles that are tight, it's the fascia that's tight. Would you say that's correct? And then also, I want to circle back on the 5 kinetic energies. I don't want to let that thought go, but let's finish this part.
Yes, yeah. I would agree with that. It's not... So when I'm stepping on people, the technique that I'm using is a compression and shearing technique.
Okay.
The technique that I learned initially in 2008 was a pinning and stretching technique.
Oh, it's different.
Which is different. So they're essentially trying to pin the fascia kind of like that saran wrap, because I think that's their mindset about it, and then stretch it like taffy. What I started doing kind of accidentally, it wasn't intentional, but I found adhesions that I was stepping on, knots, balled up tissue. Yeah. And I wanted to crunch it. Like, I know that's a technical term, but I was like, let's see if we can like scrub it out, Yeah. And when I started doing that, my clients started getting instantly out of pain. This was before I had my own personal breakthrough. So this was between 2008 and 2011. I was working with people in pain while being a person in pain myself. And I was getting results, but I couldn't tell people why or how to prevent it from coming back. Like, I had no idea why what we were doing was working, which was very frustrating for me, because I like to know why. I'm always asking why and taking to the internet and then asking myself why and asking the body why, and then kind of piecing things together and formulating theories and then testing theories. So I started compressing these knots, which is why I can tell you it's the fascia, not muscle. So, and here's how I know this for a fact. I've worked with many clients who will come to me and will find a knot or an adhesion and will compress and shear it. And so this is something on my YouTube channel people know. I call it the clunk, where you hunt out the clunk and then you shear it. In some people, it disappears. The knot did. And so, what I know about fascia from research papers that I've read and people who study fascia in ways different from me, I prefer to study it in real life, like actually touching it. But I also find it beneficial to read those research papers and see what's coming out of the science institutions. And like I said earlier, fascia is mostly water. It's supposed to be mostly water, but it can absolutely get dehydrated. And when it becomes dehydrated, it gets stickier and it becomes like Velcro, and then it sticks to itself.
Wow. Yeah, everything doesn't work right when we're dehydrated, which is kind of a chronic problem with everybody nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why do you think when we experience injury or pain or trauma or whatever, why do you think the fascia is the thing that takes the hit? I mean, like, I don't know, out of all the organ systems, cells, body structures, what is it about the fascia? Because I know it's been called like the connector of the body, metaphysically as well as physically. And then I want to talk to you about its role as relationships, but it connects everything. But I don't know. Is that why? Because it's a general like alert for the whole body to know something's wrong? Like, is that why? Why do you think the fascia is the thing that is the ticket?
It's a great question. This is my theory. So one of the reasons I love reading science papers is because they will actually just tell you facts, and they won't pollute the facts with opinions.
Give like value judgments and stuff, yeah.
So then I can just read the facts and take them in and go, how does these facts of this, science paper or whatever, how does it match up to my experience working with hundreds and then now at this point, thousands of people? And I can start to see patterns then. And so one of the things that has come out of science regarding fascia, the world of fascia research, is that fascia has contractile cells. So it can contract independent of muscle.
Wow. It has its own brain, right?
It has its own intelligence. It can act. Something is acting on the fascia that has no relationship to the nervous system and the brain.
And have we found
I shouldn't say no relationship. It's not beholden.
Okay, not run by. Okay, but have we found like a localized source of like I don't know, like where is that? Where is the intelligence originating from?
I could certainly give you my opinion on that today if you like, and you would be the first one hearing that because most people, it's kind of a radical take. But just to finish the thought on why fascia may be one of the elements of the human organism that is impacted the most through experiences of trauma, whether they're emotional or physical, because let's say you're 7 and you get in a really bad car accident with your family or in a car, or you're 11 and you have a really bad sporting accident like you talked about, or maybe you're a teenager and you think you're going to go to college on a sports scholarship and you get an injury that actually turns your whole world upside down. Like that is traumatic in a way because it interferes with your current sense of self-identity and your capacities as an able-bodied person. And I'm someone who, fill in the blank, I'm someone who plays soccer or hockey. I'm headed to college on this scholarship or whatever it is. And so anytime our self-identity is threatened, we feel threatened. But then of course there are emotional traumas and social traumas as well. And what they all kind of have in common is we feel threatened on some level. We feel threatened socially, or, we're afraid of punishment or afraid of banishment from the tribe, or we're afraid of what this might mean about our future if we can't play sports or we can't be as active as we want to be in the case of injury. And my theory on fascia, given what we know from the science that has its own contractile cells, and also I can feel this when I step on people. The fascia kind of has this own like way of like moving under my feet, but I'm not sure I would have ever come to that conclusion on my own had I not read this paper. But my theory is that fascia contracts to protect us when we can't or won't protect ourselves.
I would say that seems consistent with everything I've learned about it.
Yep. And so whether it's physical or emotional, it's a form of bracing, right? And bracing is the number one thing we do when we feel threatened and we don't know what to do, because bracing is kind of an all-encompassing self-protection strategy. Like at least if I'm holding myself tight, at least my organs are a little bit protected.
Yeah, because if you think of like, I'm about to get punched in the stomach, you brace, right? Or you're playing a sport and football, whatever, or even if you see a car accident about to happen, someone's going to hit you, you brace. So you're right. Like and it causes tension and you bear down, So fascia is like a big connector. A lot of people can think of it as, because all of us are so tight, right? I mean, a lot of it's from excessive sitting, and we got text neck and all this crazy stuff. I mean, sitting is the new smoking, and we don't get outside enough, all this stuff. But it sounds like we have to find a way to release the fascia. So let's stick with the physical more. First of all, I know your method works with partners, but what if someone doesn't have a partner? I mean, is there any way they can effectively address these issues by themselves?
Well, so I started in 2008. obviously, I, as I said, I was stepped on for the first time, and then I had this really profound healing experience with my friend when she agreed to learn how to step on me and help me run and hike again. I hadn't been able to run or hike for 8 years at that point. And so I didn't even know foam rollers existed back then, or balls or all these other things.
Yeah.
And then I opened my private practice, and it wasn't until about 2014, 2015 that I picked up a foam roller and got on YouTube, or thought about getting on YouTube, because I asked myself the same thing, like, oh my God, this is amazing. How can I, share this with more people? And I didn't see anything online about compression and shearing. I was seeing a lot of like tissue smashing and what are they called? The bands that they're I forget. I forget what they're called, but anyway, bands that you use to try to shear, but you wrap it around the whole muscle belly. Anyway, it has a name. Maybe it'll come to me. And so I started teaching it online in that way. So my YouTube channel is full of techniques you can use on yourself.
Cool.
And then I started teaching online courses, and I learned something that was frustrating for me, and I'm sure the people in my community, that I didn't know, that I had to probably go through this experience to learn it. But the people who find my YouTube videos and just give it a go and do it, a lot of them just get results, and they don't need to buy anything from me. They don't need to join a course. And my YouTube channel is full of testimonials and really happy people, because they're using the techniques and they're feeling better, and it's getting them out of pain. And then I opened courses teaching people self-fascia release, so using foam rollers and balls and that kind of thing. And almost no one was getting out of pain.
Oh.
And so but I was like, what's going on? Because I don't feel good taking people's money. Like,
right.
I should be helping these people more than the people for free who aren't paying anything.
That's
and
weird.
It took me a couple years actually to figure this out. But it was the people, you'll see some comments like this on my YouTube channel. And there certainly are people probably who just don't bother to comment and have this experience where they try one of the techniques on my YouTube channel, and either their pain gets worse, or it doesn't help at all, or it really hurts to do it and they don't feel any better. And they think to themselves, I must be doing this wrong.
Right.
Or they think, oh, am I going to hurt myself? Like, I think I need help. Like, I need instruction. And so those would be the people who would join my course, because they tried the techniques on my YouTube channel. It didn't really work. And so they thought they were maybe not doing it right. And then they would join my courses. And that's what really taught me that we really have to look at the nervous system. Like, it's because there's something in the way of you being able to do this for yourself. And to put it really bluntly, Amy, I'm just going to spit it out. This is what I think is going on, is that people who are afraid of feeling have a hard time with it. They're
guarding. Yeah, they're guarding for sure.
Well, they don't know what they're feeling, or it hurts and they're afraid of pain. And so they get off the roller and they think it can't possibly be helping me if it hurts this much. And they go into stories about it, or they're bracing or tensing up or holding their breath, or, and then there are other issues with it as well, which is one of the reasons I stopped teaching it personally, even though on my YouTube channel it was helping a lot of people. It wasn't my story. It wasn't what helped me. And I don't actually like it very much. I was doing it to help people, the self-fascia release. And one of the reasons for me anyway, is that I have patterns of self-reliance, self-isolation, and being uber responsible and feeling like I have to do everything by myself. And so for me to actually heal all the things related to what's going on here, I actually need to do it in relationship.
You need another person.
Another person. So that's one reason. But the other is, I got so desperate during a certain period where I didn't have anyone to step on me because I haven't trained like an army of people yet who can just step on me at any time, that I was doing self-fascia release, trying to get back to this feeling that Jess and I created together in 2011, which is this feeling of lightness and buoyancy in the body. That's what optimized fascia feels like. And it has to do with that watery element. And it just would never get me there. I would have to spend 2 hours a day rolling around on balls, 5 days a week. And I would do that for a month and feel okay, but not great. And it's like, you could step on me for an hour if you knew what you were doing, and I'd feel 10 times better than I would in a month of self-fascia release. So I'm really on a mission to inspire. It's like, what kind of world are we living in, Amy, if we all don't have one person who would like learn something that would save us thousands of dollars, right? And like, let's just do it once a week on the weekend for 90 minutes.
And not to mention just our daily life experience, of how we feel, and you mentioned that your best friend who did step on you with that initial breakthrough was not trained at all in any of this. So that's very encouraging to the rest of us. Like you said, if we don't have one person. So don't worry, everybody. You could teach your partner, your husband, your friend. You don't need any kind of physical therapy, medical background to be able to do this kind of thing.
Not
which
at
is very
all.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. In
cool.
fact, I think it gets in the way. Like I have an online course that teaches you how to do this at home. And the people who succeed are partners because they're not overthinking it. And they're not like projecting onto the experience all this, knowledge that they have, and they're just going for it and getting results. And that's what happened for Jess and I as well.
Well, let's circle back. You said, I think probably the most important thing of the show the pain. Okay, so I've been hearing this a lot. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of us don't know why we're in pain. Like we just know that certain things are not changing. And you said it in the beginning, so much of our pain is in our unconscious. And that's the nature of traumas. The psyche dissociates. If something is too much for our conscious mind to process, to handle, to feel like we have the ability to cope, we will disassociate, and sometimes the personality splits off. It depends how bad it is, right? But you block out the memory, right? It's like, children who are abused and they don't remember until their 40s or 50s. Holy shit. I just, I'm getting these flashbacks that I never even was consciously aware of that this happened to me. Or we have these unexplained phobias like I did. I didn't know why. I had this thing. I couldn't get over it. I went through all kinds of therapy and hypnosis and drugs and different things, and nothing could cure it. And it was in my unconscious, but my logical, adult, rational brain was like, I get it. This is so stupid. I hate this. Why do I have this thing? I couldn't get over it, but it was in my unconscious. My body kept the score. My cells remembered what happened. So, the drama is in of the trauma is in your tissues, right? So you're dealing with very difficult territory here. And my hat is off to you because it's very scary for people. Like you said, these people that came to you, they weren't getting results, but a part of them was guarding it. They was afraid to go there. And I heard you mention before in one of your interviews that, sometimes being professional is a barrier, that you have in a relationship with your clients and you open it up to really love them and care about them, because the key, Alicia, is the person has got to feel safe to be vulnerable, to feel. They have to feel safe. Safety is the foundation of everything in life. It's the foundation of intimacy. It's the foundation of being authentic. Like we have to feel like we are safe to open up, to relax, right? We don't have to be on guard. We don't have to be alert. We don't have to be anxious, because what happens is the nervous system gets stuck in overdrive, right? When we're traumatized, our nervous system's always on alert because we're looking out for the next trauma. We're on guard. But when we feel safe with a therapist like you who is trustworthy, that we can let go and go into the pain because we know this person's going to hold the space for me and I can trust them. So please talk to us about what you've learned about that and how we can find someone or create an environment where we feel safe too, to be able to feel the pain, to then heal.
I'm going to flip this on you and slightly disagree with you. And I say slightly because I can feel what you're saying, and what I feel you knowing in yourself is true. But the word, I love words. And I think, if we're going to have a conversation and we're using words like safety, let's define what they mean. Because my philosophy is actually that what's really needed is not necessarily safe spaces, but courageous spaces and courageous people. And the reason I say that, and what, like I said, everything you're saying right now, I can feel that there's a truth that you're speaking that that I agree with, which is that we do need to feel, to know, to sense that we can be ourselves, or that we could emote if we needed to, or that this person cares about me, or whatever the case may be. Because everybody's needs are slightly different. But I actually think what we're all longing for that we don't really realize is for somebody to get in the trenches of uncertainty, doubt, despair, pain, and terror, who isn't afraid of all that.
Well, and that's a safe environment, right? This person's got you. They can
not necessarily, because imagine you and I are, not that I really want to imagine this, but if you imagine that you and I are in a war together and we're soldiers, we're not in a safe space.
Yeah.
We're in a dangerous space. For us to carry ourselves through that danger to the absolute best of our ability and hopefully come through it healthy and whole, we have to go through it together with our emotions intact and our senses open, and not and I guess essentially the essential thing is it has to be voluntary. So if I'm, and that's a whole can of worms, voluntary. Because there's, as you said, conscious you was probably voluntarily facing your phobias. And then unconscious you was like, I don't care what you think about this. I feel terrified. Right.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing that I would say I see with soldiers, for example, with PTSD. I think on some level they didn't realize what they were signing up for, and it was, by the time they got there, it was too late, and they didn't know how to unvolunteer, take back that voluntary. And that would have been embarrassing maybe, or humiliating, or they would have felt, maybe gotten made fun of or whatever. Versus the ones who are just no, I know exactly what I'm signing up for, and I'm 100% volunteering for it, and I'm all in. Those people can face danger in a healthy way. If you're my client and we're in an office and we're working together, right? And we're not back at whatever traumatic experience that you may have had in childhood. That's not happening right now, but it doesn't matter to your feelings or to my feelings or anyone's feelings what we know about right now. What matters is how we feel and what's being triggered, right? Some things, it's kind of the body's kind of littered with landmines. So when I'm stepping on people, we find some landmines, and maybe emotions come out, maybe memories get stirred, and maybe nothing at all happens, and someone just kind of gets this glazed over look, which to me is okay, they're dissociating or they're not here. Yeah, I guess just to maybe wrap this part up, I feel very strongly I tried the whole try to find safety or tell myself I'm safe in my body, but no amount of doing that helped me feel better. What helped me was learning to competently and confidently face danger. Mm-hmm. And so we all what I want to go back to is the very first thing I said in the beginning, which is like, we're all individuals. Danger means something specific to me based on my history and the things that I went through, or maybe I'm currently going through. You have faced different dangers. And so danger means something a little different to you. So what I have to learn to face is going to be different than you. But it feels dangerous nonetheless, even though maybe rationally it doesn't make sense. Like we wouldn't consciously say, oh yeah, I totally see that as a danger. Like who would think that getting on a foam roller is dangerous? Nobody. Mm-hmm. But it might feel that way to some people. Or getting stepped on, or getting in an ice bath, or public speaking, or fill in the blank, right?
But we're talking about someone going into deep emotional psychic pain, and for someone to feel like they are willing to be courageous and to open up and to go into that scary abyss, which you've probably heard, as I have so many times, of people that are afraid to feel the pain. That's why they disassociate. That's why they distract themselves, keeping over busy, over shopping, overspending, overeating, over everything, because they're afraid they're never going to get out of the pain. They're afraid they don't have the ability to handle it and they'll get lost in it. So for them to go there, they do have to feel like they're in an environment, a situation somehow where they're not going to drown in it. And that's what I'm talking about, creating a safe space, a safe something. I mean, not that you've got all the answers, you as in you general, but that they're in a place of that can withstand going there, and they're going to survive it, because it's, as you know, it's scary as hell, right? I mean, it's like, what's happening? Your body is having all these reactions and you don't even understand why. And you might not even remember why your body's crying and screaming and emoting and, like Rolfing. I mean, I remember I got Rolfed once and I was like, all of a sudden I started crying. And I was like, I don't even know why I'm crying. It's like literally my body cried and my mind didn't understand it. But my body knew something happened at that spot. But anyway, go ahead, please.
All the time, yeah. I guess what I maybe just wanted to say about that is, and this is the tricky role of a practitioner, and what I might say to people listening who aren't practitioners is, well, I don't want to tell anyone what to do. Please source authority from within. But I want to work with somebody who's not going to let any of my strong feelings persuade them one way or the other. Let me give you an example. I just recently worked with a client with extreme suicidality that was coming on very suddenly, and it was terrifying her. So she didn't want to kill herself, but she was having all these thoughts, and her own thoughts were terrifying her so much that her body was now getting just full of tension and anxiety. And then other symptoms were coming on, and she wanted my help. And she was telling me this in the beginning, and she was like, I'm so desperate, I can't even tell you. And I was like, well, you can feel however you want to feel. Oh, and let me back up really quick. She told me, again, before I said what I'm about to tell you, that I told her that just 2 days before we talked, she called a hotline. She was so desperate and scared of herself. She called a hotline. The hotline asked if they could call the police. They called the police. The police came. And that's maybe 100% necessary, and maybe it saved her life. I don't really know. But what I told her is, you can feel however you need to feel. But I just want you to know that I'm going to hold a space here called there's no emergency. Because if I allow you to make me desperate too, or to think that, oh my God, this is really serious and I have to do something or you might kill yourself, then I can't help you. And she was like, oh, I like your container a lot better than mine.
But see, you're demonstrating what I'm saying. You created the safe, stable container. It's like if you're on a plane that's going down, you don't want the pilot freaking out. You are a true leader. You are able to hold the space and to keep it steady. Like that pilot has to keep his head when the plane's going down.
I think that's what I'm saying though, is can we keep our heads and have equanimity and full awareness of what's happening, so that we can respond intelligently while entering dangerous spaces?
Yes. That's the goal. This is heavy stuff. I mean, again, like I said, being in the show, my hat's off to you. I mean, I can't even imagine some of this stuff. I mean, geez, suicidal clients. I mean, and the thing is, Alicia, this stuff's being held in our bodies. You know, like, let's talk about the nervous system, right? So when you're in a state of stress, anxiety, or you've had psychological trauma that you might not even remember, or maybe you do know, like something was weird about that person in my life when I was a kid, or whatever it is, right? But what happens is essentially is the body gets stuck in overdrive. It's like having your foot on the gas all the time, but then your foot's on the brake too. So you're just wasting so much energy inside your body because your body it's incoherent, right? It's fighting itself. So let's talk about the nervous system and what you think the mechanism is here of what's happening of part of you mentioned would you say the feeling buoyancy that your clients feel buoyant after. Talk to us about what's happening in the body and, you know, the fascia's role with the lymphatic system and the immune system and just kind of what's happening to kind of give us motivation to do this work of how we don't realize how tight we are. You know, it's like after you get a massage or do a yoga class, you're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like I got used to my shoulders being around my ears. You know, you don't realize how tight you are and how much energy your body's using. So educate us on that.
We don't realize how good we can feel. Yes. And it's so sad that, I mean, I'm guilty of this too, until I remember, right? Like, oh my God, I forgot how good I can feel. What the heck? Like we will settle for an absence of pain, right? But that doesn't mean we feel really good. You asked me about a lot there. I'll try to circle through all of them because they're all related. So, and you mentioned that earlier too. So fascia is this connector. It is the element in the body that connects and separates everything. So it's the only substance in the body that touches, literally physically touches, is in contact with every single different part of us. Wow. So, for example, our muscles don't touch our nerves. Our bones don't touch our muscles, our et cetera, et cetera. So it's the fascia that touches everything. And then of course separates all these different aspects of us from each other. So it's kind of like a boundary, right? It's like the boundary between things. It's the space between, which is a boundary. And it's really this fascial element that would give us this feeling of lightness and buoyancy. And then in particular, it's the watery component. So I mentioned the water battery earlier and the structured water. So this is my research in my lab of my private practice, combined with the work of Jerry Pollack, who I absolutely love. He wrote, of course, the book, The Fourth Phase of Water. Have you read it?
Sure do. Got it right over there. Easy water, baby. Yep.
Awesome. So what I found so interesting, if you reread his book, or maybe you'll recall it if you have a good memory, he talks so much about the extracellular matrix in that book. Mm-hmm. But he never once says the word fascia. So remember earlier I gave you this picture of like the saran wrap is like the walls, like the apple peel or whatever, but inside is the extracellular matrix. Mm-hmm. So fascia houses this ECM for short. And that's where the structured water is really created and creates that water battery. So it's, in that book, he talks about compression and sharing of water molecules.
Yep.
And that is what actually gets them to arrange themselves or structure themselves in this honeycomb lattice shape of structured water, where it's 3 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. And when that happens, that water is hydrophilic and it sticks to the walls, the saran wrap. And the H2O is pushed to the center. And the negative and positive charges between them. So the structured water is negatively charged. The bulk water, H2O, is positively charged. And that, of course, creates a battery, because anytime you have a positive and negative charge, you have a battery. And so then it powers fluids through the body, including the lymph, including our blood, which is mostly water, and the blood vessels are wrapped in fascia. And then, of course, that extracellular matrix which is really where a lot of the toxins are dumped from cells. Or if we have dead cells, they'll, try to put themselves into essentially it's like the garbage truck system of the body in the extracellular matrix. But then we have the lymph, which is housed inside this superficial fascia, which sits just under the skin. So the visual I kind of like to give is if you imagine we're made of like all these wetsuits that we wear on top of each other,
Okay. Sounds very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
Well, hopefully they're flexible and they can move with us until they're not, right? And then it's really uncomfortable. But it's kind of like that. So we've got the bones, which are the deepest, of course, and fascia wraps the bones. And then we have the deep fascia and the musculature and the blood vessels and all that. And then we have the lymph system, and then we have the skin. So these are like, suits that we wear, you might say. So it's that structured water that I believe creates that feeling of lightness and buoyancy, because anytime we're moving quickly without expending much energy, right? Because it's a battery, it's self-sustaining at that point. We don't have to expend energy to move.
Wow. Yeah.
So those feelings have to do with the fascia. Pain mostly has to do with the nervous system.
Okay.
But the nervous system can impact our fascia and our lymph system and whether or not we can release toxins efficiently. I had that experience. Like, I didn't realize until I was 40 years old, 41, somewhere in there, that I had difficulty letting go, which is kind of hilarious, because then when I told it to like my friends, they were like, yeah.
We knew that.
Didn't think we had to tell you. But that showed up in my body.
Sure, of course.
Which meant, I couldn't let go of toxins. So even though I would like sweat profusely out of my armpits ever since I went through this trauma of mine. I just I wouldn't sweat through my face if I was exercising. My limbs would never sweat. My hands would never sweat. Like no other
constipated.
Part of me. Exactly. Wasn't letting go of food, basically everything. So I've never tended towards like the diarrhea side of things, or, so there are people that tend towards that. So I hold on too tightly, and other people let go too quickly. Right. And so health is in the balance between them, because we want to hold on to nutrients. We want to hold on to water. We want to, but then we want to move them out too when they need to go out. And I had a profound experience in 2020 of realizing a lot of things. Like you said, I had a memory actually come to me that I hadn't, not anything that traumatic, but it was related in a way that allowed me to see that I'd been waiting for my parents to come get me since I was 10. Essentially, I had been dropped off at a friend's house to live with them for an indefinite amount of time while my parents split up.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my God, I have been waiting. I'm 40 years old, and I've been waiting for 30 years for there's a part of me that's still 10 waiting for them to come get me. Wow. And so I was able to actually let go, and by telling myself they're never coming.
Wow.
And I cried for like 6 weeks.
Wow.
A lot.
Yeah.
And then my body started sweating and letting go of things.
Wow.
And I wasn't doing it for that reason. It just happened. And so I had tried, because I had mercury poisoning and other, health stuff related to toxicity exposures, mold exposure. So I had tried for a couple of years to heal myself, to detox with supplements and cleanses and juice fasts, and like nothing worked because I don't have a body that wants to let go easily, because of these other things. And so that's an example of what I might say, I call the nervous system the gatekeeper, because we have to go through it to get to all this other stuff. Like, we have amazing capacities for co-creative power with our bodies for regeneration, but we don't get those powers until we pass through the gatekeeper, until we work through our stuff, basically.
I think that's so brilliant. I love everything you just said. I think it's right on the money in my experience too. And, it just makes me think about My goodness, Alicia, how many people that have symptoms and problems and digestion and skin and migraines and PMS and all this stuff. And they're taking, all the superficial stuff, but it's like, nope, until you really deal with the real source issue, which again, to their credit, they might not be consciously aware of what it was. So it's kind of like a crazy conundrum when you think about it. But
it is. Yeah, because I would say also there are a lot of people like me and a lot of my clients who are aware, because I was aware. I actually hired a few detox people who also specialized in things like internal family systems, because I was like, I know it's something in my nervous system, a pattern related to my trauma that's not letting me detox. Can we try to figure this out together? And people were like, well, what?
Yeah, but you were that much ahead of it.
The therapy side of things is not related to the body side of things, really. So it is a conundrum, because you might be aware or sense or have this feeling like, but what do you do? And I don't exactly have a ready answer. But this mapping thing that I mentioned earlier, we can learn to do it for ourselves. And I'm currently working with a beta group of people to do it without stepping. And it's going really well. Just online, where you can learn to map yourself. But it requires some upfront patience to learn what the heck you're mapping. So mostly what we end up mapping are these subconscious patterns. And the body is trying to speak to us. It just doesn't speak English. And she ended up having a profound realization that, anyway, I don't want to say too much about her, but that a lot of what was happening was a message she just couldn't quite see, because we're too in our stuff. This is, again, why I just really think we need help. It's like, from a friend, ideally, like in an ideal world, I'd love to put myself out of business, because who wants to pay someone really to, like, you know what I mean? To excavate this stuff. I would much rather personally be a friend or someone, they're going through their shit and I help them, and I'm going through mine and they help me. But in the meantime, hopefully we can find practitioners that can help us. But she did have a realization and stopped being so afraid of herself, and sent me a beautiful email a couple of days later. And it always makes me feel,
It's beautiful.
It's hard to, it's hard to, I don't like taking credit, because I just like to say, I think people are ready when they're ready. They just they're not quite getting the right help, because I feel like she was so on the verge, and I think most of us are. And it was just like, I just like opened this little door that she didn't see, but then she had to walk through it. And so she did it.
That's right. That's right. That's beautiful. You mentioned boundaries. I think that you're on something there. The fascia is the boundary, both literally and metaphorically, right? And, with trauma, like a boundary being crossed or disrespected or whatever. I mean, would you like to say anything about the metaphysical, symbolical representation of fascia?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the nervous system, because again, they're so closely linked, and then I'll go to the fascia. So when we show up for ourselves and do the hard work of seeing what we usually don't want to see, for example, a lot of the things that I didn't want to see about myself that kept me imprisoned in symptoms that were painful were things like, I would rather be in this disease experience than admit to myself that I'm terrified of humiliation and I have a tendency towards pride. And so I had to see that, which wasn't, and then it was very painful, because I came to this realization, oh my God, I was so full of pride that I wasn't even willing to be vulnerable with people who wanted to be my friend, who wanted to love me. But I just kept myself at a distance, because I wanted them to see me as all put together and, not falling apart and not helpless. And, and so the two feelings I've done the most to avoid in my life are helplessness and humiliation. So there's something that we're all avoiding. And so I call it we have a preferred self. Like I'd rather be strong than helpless. I'd rather be, stoic and tough and not let anything really bother me, not let people know I'm hurting. than actually admit to people that they hurt me, or admit to myself that I'm hurtable. So that, so if we're willing to do that work, or I should say when we do that work, we liberate our body from carrying that burden because we're now carrying it spiritually. And when that happens, I'm getting chills right now. When that happens, beautiful. It's like putting on the armor of God.
Yep.
And now our fascia can protect us in a totally different way. It's not the kind of protection that is corrosive and corrupts, because that tightening and bracing and holding kind of protection.
It's not like armor back in the days of the knights and the kings and it's a different texture. It restores that supple, soft, but strong quality to fascia. I shouldn't say automatically. It's not like if you just do the nervous system work, you're going to have like healthy fascia, but it will not be burdened by those psychological wounds that we're just kind of stuffing into the body. Yeah.
And then if you do if you do the self fascia release at this point, you'll feel better. You'll feel lighter. You'll feel more buoyant. It's hard for me to measure it because I'm so used to being stepped on, which is a completely different thing. But it's such a strange and beautiful thing, Amy, because what it really is, this is how I see it, is when we do that work, we're allowing ourselves to be vulnerable to all of life's dangers, you might say. Yes, you might get injured again. Yes, you might get your heart broken again. Yes, someone might betray you or abandon you. And yes, someday you're going to die. And I'm going to live my life fully, knowing I might get hurt. And when you walk around with that kind of armor, it's a different kind of armor. It's spiritual, it's energetic, it's a qualitative rather than quantitative thing. And it's an amazing feeling. And if I could bottle it and give it to everybody, I would.
I know exactly what you're saying. That's true courage. That's true courage right there. And I'm right with you. I literally have that in my prayers. Like, I want to live fully. And that means I am signing up to allow myself to maybe get annihilated emotionally, to be creamed, to be out there. Like, the whole thing of being, that saying, like, people who are afraid to fail, but you're also afraid to be successful, because the more out there you are, the more you're open to criticism. And right. It's all that stuff. It's all the self-sabotage. We all do it. Or, truly being in love and intimate with someone requires tremendous vulnerability, which requires tremendous strength. Because I remember my last serious boyfriend, I knew immediately when I met him, I was like, oh, this is going to be a relationship. I really didn't know how good it was going to be. It was a great relationship. It was the second love of my life. But I remember right around maybe 1 week, then I knew like something, this is big. Like this is really a big relationship. But I got to say, I was scared to death because I really loved him. And I really hadn't felt that level of vulnerability in my whole life. So I know exactly what you're saying. It takes real courage to love, because you can be annihilated. It takes real courage to be out there in the world and be a pioneer and go against the grain and everything that you're doing.
And it doesn't have to be a big thing, like the people that I work with are and this was true for me. I help them get out of pain. And then they're scared to go do the activities they wanted to do again. And I'm like, no, you have to. Like, but do you? Don't listen, but you have to.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like nudge them, like, don't shrink your life in fear,
Don't shrink your life in fear.
You've just learned with me that you can heal, that you can regenerate, that your body's amazing, that, you can resolve pain. But if you walk around afraid of getting injured again, guess what? You're probably going to get injured.
Right on. So, so true. And there's a lot of theory. I'd like to know what you think about this, that some people, like, I don't know what it's called, Alicia, but like it's like when people have a disease or an illness or diabetes or whatever, it's like that becomes their identity, and it's almost like they hide behind it. Like that's their excuse to not live. So one of the questions of a good therapist can be, what would your life be like if you didn't have this? Like, what would you do if you didn't have fibromyalgia, or if you didn't have diabetes, or you didn't have what is this affliction allowing you to not do or avoid in your life, or, whatever. And it'd be very triggering for people. Like, what do you mean? I don't choose this, and yeah, I get it. But it's something to consider, right? Because it's like, yeah, it can be something we're avoiding. So that's very powerful. Before I let you go, I can't believe the time is flying by. We have to circle back on the 5 kinetic energies of the planet, because I did mention I was going to ask you about those, and I don't want someone listening going, when is she going to talk about those? So can you tell us kind of a synopsis of what they are and how they have to do with this discussion today, please?
Yeah, this will be, I'll do my best to do it briefly. I could teach a whole course on this, but there are 5 kinetic energies. There are many types of energy, but these are the 5 primary, kinetic energies, meaning they are energies that move. And they are light or radiant energy, sunlight, thermal energy, so heat and cold, thermal energy, sound vibration, mechanical energy, and electromagnetism. We can harness, absorb, transmit, transform, or transfer all 5 of these energies. We have them in our body all the time anyway. But these energies are a really important part of our health. This is why in the last few years it's become so popular to talk about getting out in the sunlight and grounding by putting your feet on the earth to get that negative charge. And then, of course, we have sound healing and all that. And I believe when I brought it up, one of the reasons I did is that this is why I stopped teaching self-fascia release as well. Because when I step on you, I am actually transferring and transmitting all 5 kinetic energies at once. I'm initiating mechanical energy to move my body, and then I initiate movement, and then I step on you. And I add weight or compression. Your body then absorbs those energies coming from my body. You have to be open to it. I will say that. We can be open or closed to receiving these energies. But if you're open to it, then you absorb these energies that I'm transferring to your body from my body. And then you move under compression. So you have to initiate the movement. I'm not moving you. And when you do that, you move all of those energies through your body and back into my body. And we become like a rechargeable battery together. You can't do this with a foam roller or a ball.
It's a relationship.
Absolutely. So we can, as I said, we can absorb, transfer, transmit, or transform those energies.
Wow.
My goal when I'm stepping with people is to transfer them to that, the person I'm stepping on, and then to use what we're doing, these energies, for transformation.
Cool.
So mechanical stress, for example. So all of these energies can be stressful. Too much sun is a bad thing. Too much heat, you'll die. Too much cold, you'll die. Right? Too much of any of these, you'll die. Mechanical stress is a form of energy, right? It's just movement. Kinetic energy coming from an object into another object is mechanical energy. But if you fall from a 100-foot building, you're going to die because of mechanical stress, right? One of the things I really do love talking about is that what has the most potential to harm has the most potential to heal. A foam roller is never going to leap off the floor and whack you in the head. So it has very limited potential to help you heal. It can do something. It's not nothing. But a human being is, for the most part, has the most potential to harm other humans, right? We experience the most harm at the hands of other humans, barring, natural disasters and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so we can absolutely hurt each other with these energies. They can be used for harm or they can be used for healing. And so the fact that we have a lot of potential for harm means we have a lot of potential for healing when we know how to harness these energies for healing and for transformation. So that's what I'm very passionate about teaching people how to do with kinetics, this method of partner fascia release and mapping. And the mechanical one is probably the most important just for the physical body, because we're wanting to change mechanical. It's mechanical stress, me coming in, which usually triggers a nervous system response related to the feelings of pain.
Yep.
And have you heard of exposure therapy?
Yes.
Amazing. It works really, 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 really well when people have phobias. I don't know if it worked for you, but
do you want to just briefly explain it for the audience so you know?
Yeah. So exposure therapy just means a little bit of what you're afraid of. If you expose yourself to it, can be curative.
It's like desensitization.
And realizing, oh, it's not so bad. This thing that I made up in my mind is a really big, bad thing. And some people need to do it gradually, and other people can go fully into it. But there are very few places you can go if you're afraid of pain.
Yeah.
To expose yourself to pain in a way that isn't masochistic or sadistic.
Right.
So Kinetics offers us a way to experience pain that has the potential for transformation and healing, but is nonetheless painful because unhealthy fascia actually hurts to get stepped on. And there's a reason for that. It's not that much of a mystery. It makes sense because if we don't have that water element, then we're not really protected at that level. We're crunchy, we're brittle, we can be damaged easily. Mm-hmm. And it's really that water element that protects us physically from injury, makes us injury resistant.
Wow.
So we are actually in danger of injury when being stepped on and it hurts. But it doesn't mean
dehydrated.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we're going to get injured, because now we're venturing into pain science territory. That's a whole other can of worms, but essentially pain is the signal from the body that there's something here that could be dangerous.
Okay.
And it's really up to us to determine if we're in danger or not and then do something about it. The body won't do it for us. It'll do the best it can to protect us if we won't protect ourselves. But that's why this has such potential for transforming our relationship to pain and the energies associated with it and the stories we've made up, and exposure to something painful that has the potential to also heal. And then some people actually really like the way it feels to get stepped on. Not everybody finds it painful. I happen to love it.
Well, I had an shiatsu massage therapist years ago, and that's that, Eastern technique of walking on your back. But obviously that's not what we're talking about here.
It's very different. So people, and it's hard to explain until you experience it, but all these ashiatsu and Thai massage, and there's like a New Zealand walking on technique. I forget what it's called. The Maori do it. But all of those that I'm aware of anyway are kind of like kneading you like a cat might with feet, and then pulling on limbs and pushing with the feet.
And it's a massage. It's not like you're doing trauma or, release work. It's not,
Well, this is so different. The thing that makes this so different is that I'm merely compressing your tissue. That's it. Okay. You have to move. So you're the one that has to initiate movement. This is why it's so powerful, because we initiate all the nerve receptors related to movement, all the nerve receptors related to pain and our body and our boundaries. Everything gets contacted at once, and
we're in control, which is a cool thing psychically. Like you're initiating it, so you're on board.
And you asked me about boundaries a little while ago. So what always comes up with people, very few people in the beginning will just of their own accord say, "Hey, could you back off?" We're all afraid of being a wuss. We don't want to, oh yeah. It's very rare that someone will do that unprompted by me. I do tell people, you can tell me to back off, but nobody wants to really say, "Hey, that's a little too much for me." Maybe we all have issues with pride.
Or they just really want to heal. Like, okay, I got to deal with this because I want to get better,
There are a lot of reasons for it.
Yeah.
So, but the body will show us where those boundaries are and where we're not protecting ourselves.
So you started a school. Tell us about your school and how people, because I'm sure by now they want to, okay, I want to try this. I got to do this, or I send this to a friend who's in pain. Where can we find you? Tell us about your school and how can we do this technique to get out of pain?
Well, you can find me at ElishaCeleste.com, just me, and that, that's my hub. So like you'll have links to absolutely everything there. And then the school is called the School for Living Science. And I'm really on a mission to inspire a renewal of science that studies living phenomena, because right now, mostly what we have with Western modern science is we study dead things, like a lot of the fascia science.
And we study disease. We study sick people.
Exactly. Yep. We don't study living phenomena. We don't study things while they're alive, really. And the reason is it's hard to study living phenomena, because what a lab usually, the language they use, right, is we want to isolate the variables, do a study control, right, isolate, control. We break things down into their tiniest parts and then study the parts, but we don't really study the relationships of the parts that create the whole.
And that's not life. Life is dynamic and involved and holistic. Yep.
Yeah. And then another major reason I started it is I've been an unlicensed practitioner going back to 2011 by choice, because my background is massage therapy. And with a massage therapy license, I would be legally forbidden by the licensing boards of addressing anything other than body tissues. So, for example, I was instructed in massage school, if a client ever cries, you just let them cry, but you don't talk to them about it. Be nice, but like you don't do trauma. You're not a psychologist. You can't that's weird,
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people today, psychologists are very frustrated, therapists, psychotherapists, because they're not allowed to touch their patients. So they're not allowed to use body-based techniques. They're not even allowed to acknowledge their patients when they see them at the grocery store legally.
What?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Wow.
So I've created
human.
Yes, it's very inhumane. And so the School for Living Science is a place for individuals, if they want to learn kinetics, can do that inside the school. I have a home study course where I teach partners how to do this. But ultimately, I do want to train practitioners to address the whole human organism and show them how to do that lawfully. Because we can do what we want to do. We can address the whole human organism as long as we don't have licenses, actually. And I'm not giving legal advice right now. Just want to make sure to say that. But there are ways to do this 100% lawfully. And that's usually, what people say is like, well, don't I have to have a license to do this? And the answer is no, but you do need to know what you're doing. And so I have chiropractors, I have physios from Europe. Most physical therapists in the US haven't wanted to jump on board yet. Massage therapists who are jumping on board, and psychotherapists, and we're studying the whole human organism together because it's all related, as we've been talking about. And I see a great need for more practitioners out there who can address the whole human organism. Even if someone's coming to you for pain, your whole organism is involved in that expression of pain. If you have a disease, your whole organism is involved in the expression of that disease. If you have a mental health condition, your whole organism is involved in the expression of that mental health condition. So I'm really passionate about that, and I hope to bring more people on board. So
absolutely amazing. I mean, my goodness, you started your own school. I mean, wow. What an amazing offering for the rest of the world. This has been incredible. I really hope, it's my prayer and hope that this is going to help a lot of people, because, there's so much emotional, physical pain in the world, and you're certainly doing your part to help alleviate that. Any final thoughts you have today?
Maybe I'll just end by saying, we didn't go too deep on pain science, but I always feel like it's my duty anytime I'm speaking with people about these things that I not mislead anyone, and sometimes performing physical techniques such as kinetics or the self fascia release or any number of other things can work. to alleviate or eliminate pain, but you probably won't know why. And I'm a really big proponent of helping people know why pain happens and what it is, so that you know how to actually move through it intelligently and know which protocol to use, which technique, for what kind of pain. And so that's one of the things I am going to be teaching a lot about in the school is pain science, but from a living science perspective. Because just performing techniques won't necessarily get someone out of pain. So I just maybe want to be clear about that. And then I'll end by saying pain is not your enemy. It's actually your friend. It's kind of like that friend that actually loves you enough to give you bad news that you don't want to hear, but you really need to hear. And so, so my mission is to help people turn towards pain. And I believe if you want freedom, you have to turn towards pain. There's some wisdom in there. There's something trying to get your attention, and it's coming from a really wise place.
If you want freedom, you have to turn towards pain. Yep. It's like when you really think about that, it unlocks the door to your freedom. It's there for a reason, something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, and it's our fear of pain that sends us scrambling for things, reaching for relief by any means, and then we're captive. We're essentially a slave to the fear. Yeah. And so turning towards the pain allows us to take back that power and actually develop our freedom. So,
well, it's good to know there are techniques out there that help address this and get to the root cause. Thank God for you. Amazing. Super grateful. This has been incredible. Guys, if this helped you or you know someone that you think it can help, please share this because, we're all here trying to help each other and share the good news. I'm all about solutions, natural, healthy, useful solutions. So thank you so much, Alicia. This has been incredible. Just super grateful for you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks, Amy, for having me. And thank you for the really great questions.
You got it. Okay, everybody. Check out those show notes and check out Alicia's work. And we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.